Hey everyone, my name is Call, and first off, this is my new studio. It's been a couple weeks since I've been active here on YouTube, and for part of the reason is I've been moving into here. So I'm in Chicago, by the way. So if you need any sort of body work, energy work, personal training, if you want to become a member of my men's group, which is on meetup.com, you can look up Soma's Garden on meetup.com, and you can find the various groups I run on there. Anyway, something else that's also kind of important is I offer sexual energy coaching. This is, in a lot of ways, a culmination of my life's work. Is I'm here, and if I have a mission, my mission is to help men, but also women, push the reset button on their understanding of sexual energy and how they work with that energy and how they relate to it. How they also work with intimacy, connection to others as well as the connection to themselves. So the sexual energy coaching program, which I have linked down below the video, is a great sort of first step into completely resetting this whole system, because it's designed as a 40-day increment, which is the amount of time that it takes for the nervous system to take on a new pattern. So all that being said, let me go ahead and get into the topic of this video, which is regarding fantasy. So I had a client not too long ago who reached out to me, and he said he was obsessed about his girlfriend. I asked him just a very, very simple question. I was like, well, is it your ex-girlfriend or your girlfriend? He says, well, it's my ex. And so I asked him, well, why are you still obsessing? How long has it been? And he says, it's been about 3-4 months since him and her were last intimate, and last time they had any real connection. So I said, why are you obsessing? The reason he was obsessing is because he was masturbating to fantasy of his ex-girlfriend. He also had some pictures he was utilizing. And again, if you're wanting to liberate yourself from a connection, the most important thing to do is to not masturbate. I shouldn't say to do, it's to not do. Is you do not want to give yourself peak experiences, which would be orgasm, or even strong stimulus relative to, if you're wanting to create space from you and the ex. So now this also kind of applies to something else which I've been thinking about, which is, if you're an unconnected individual, if you don't have any sort of intimate connection, or if you do have an intimate connection, so there's a Buddhist practice, I think it was a Buddhist practice, it's Tibetan Buddhism, and I remember reading about this sorry, you'll have to excuse me, I don't recall the book, but it's a practice. And one of the things about this particular practice was this idea of conjuring within your mind's eye your ideal man or woman, whatever it is that sort of gets you going. Now, one of the things that was most important that they kept emphasizing in the description as I was reading about this was the reason is we're creating this god or goddess in order to provoke our sexual energy, to raise this energy up. Okay, so this is a psychophysical spiritual practice. Okay, and most of the time, people, men, oftentimes are engaging their sexual energy in unconscious ways. Horny rises, the story, horny rises, you try to get rid of it, right? So you gotta get rid of it. Oh, I can't handle being horny, right? So this is the general attitude. Now, if you're one of those guys, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you, but it's a thing. Why can't you just contain the horny, right? Why can't you just contain that sexual energy and feel it all over the body? Well, because you need tools. That's the thing. And again, that's part of the program I created, is to create tools in which we can then connect to this energy, utilize the energy, and to be okay with having it, right? To be okay just having that energy within ourselves. So this particular Buddhist practice was, what it kept explicitly saying is as you're conjuring this god or goddess in your mind's eye in order to raise up the sexual energy, what's really important is that it not be a real human being or whatever. So now why? Why would you not want it to be a real human being? This is where my brain was like, I started to kind of get a little bit kind of well, I wasn't confused, but it really kind of jarred some thought. And the thought that I had was, well, why wouldn't I want to do this? Because if it's just in your imagination, it's not real, right? Well, that's not true. It is real, right? Just the same as the story I told you about the individual who kept conjuring in his mind's eye or visually through, some picture. He kept masturbating and creating peak experiences and kept attaching him to his ex-girlfriend. So this can happen as well. Let's say you're all into some Hollywood star, right? So some Hollywood star really gets your juices going. So you're like fantasizing about this Hollywood star, and so you're doing your thing, right? You're doing your thing, fantasizing about the Hollywood star. Then you give yourself a peak experience. You have to ask yourself a very simple question. And now again, you have to break down this time and space, right? You have to break down time and space. And what do I mean by that? You have to kind of relate to things as energy as opposed to matter. Because if I'm going to fantasize about, let's say, Scarlett Johansson, she's nice. So if I'm going to fantasize about Scarlett Johansson, what ends up happening is that in my mind's eye, I perceive Scarlett Johansson. I'm giving myself some pleasure. I ejaculate. That energy goes to the fantasy, right? It goes toward what it is that you had in your mind's eye. This is the power of, let's say practices like sex magic, right? This is that power, right? The power is energy flows to where the attention goes. And this is why so many human beings, myself included, are a little bit sloppy. We're a little bit sloppy with our energy, even worry. I tend to worry a lot. And I'm not realizing I'm worrying about this and that and everything else. It drains me, and I'm like, why am I so drained? I was just worrying. I'm literally just sitting on the couch and worrying. It's incredibly draining because energy is going out, right? And this is what's really incredibly important about knowing how to be present and centered within oneself. Because otherwise we create sort of like holes in our aura, in our field, where we're sending energy out in all these different directions. So again, this Buddhist practice. I'll go ahead and briefly describe it. This is why you don't want to fantasize. Well, I guess you can fantasize if you want about Scarlett Johansson or some person. Your body, your choice. Your energy, your choice. Okay, but I suggest you not. I suggest that you conjure within your mind's eye this like a being or an entity within your mind's eye, and it not be a real person. I often do this, and it's just kind of a headless person. I never see a face. I can see two legs, I can see a torso, and I can see all the sort of sexual accoutrement, the breasts, etc. But I can never usually sort of imagine a face, because naturally when I want to imagine a face, I tend to think about people that I've seen or know. So this practice is essentially, if you can picture a dot, it's a point of light. And out of this point of light, it starts to expand. And you want to, for me, this is how I do it. It expands, and I see the legs expand out of that point of light. And then I see the torso, then I see the arms expand out of that point of light. And then, like I said, usually I'll see like a neck, but no face, right? So it'll be head comes out of that point of light. And there's hair and, everything else. And, in my mind's eye, I can make this absolutely perfect. I can make this the perfect example of, I guess my ideal sexual idol. So as you create this image and you create some stimulus, right? So you're raising this energy up. And I know guys have masturbated hundreds, if not thousands of times in their lives. And the reason they've never really looked at this as being significant or meaningful, in terms of where they're directing their awareness. But it's the same thing. If they're looking at pornography, energy goes to the pornography when they ejaculate, really. And again, it's a really basic concept you just want to keep in the back of your mind when you're doing these things. It's kind of like energetic responsibility. And so, again, as you form this person in your mind's eye, you stimulate, you get that energy up, you do some practices, so you raise that energy up, take that deep breath in, you lift up your root lock, right? So you do your root lock, your mula bandha, tongue at the roof mouth, eyes roll up above the crown, right? So you're using this stimulus to channel energy. So once you've done this, something else that's really important is that you then shrink this person. The arms go back inside the torso, the legs go back inside the torso, and everything just sort of spins right back down into that single point of light, and then poof, right? You have to disappear what it is you've created. And I think, like I said, it's all really based on energy flows to where the attention goes. If you understand that one basic concept, you'll understand Taoism, you'll understand Tantra, you'll understand yoga, you'll understand pretty much any, again, psychophysical, spiritual practice out there. They all have the same foundation in terms of that simple concept. So, all right, I'll go into it. So just real briefly, these particular practices in terms of the, creating some sort of, entity in one's mind's eye, I will tell you, you're all going to look at me like I'm crazy when I say this, and please correct me if I'm getting the wrong terms. You have incubus and succubus. And I believe the succubus is the sort of female entity and the incubus is the male entity. I don't remember precisely. Incubus is also a bad rock band, I believe. So the idea here is you got these entities. And what I will say is that I did this one evening about 7 or 8 years ago. My sexual energy was really ramped up. And in the middle of the night, I'd done this kind of practice, but I didn't disappear the entity. I got a visitation in that evening, and it was really interesting and fascinating, but this entity appeared before me as my perfect female, right? And this entity wanted to have sex with me, and I did, of course. But when it was time for me to release, I said, no, that's my energy. So then the entity looks at me upset, and poof, disappeared, right? Because there's kind of an energy exchange here. If some entity visits you, or whatever it is, it's going to want something from you. So if you're into like witchy stuff or anything like that, be very, very careful what you're conjuring. These things have an impact on your energy, even if you don't perceive them. Like this succubus, again, I'm calling it a succubus. I don't know what it was. This succubus, it was really good for provoking the energy, getting the energy up in a very intense way. And it appeared to me as if it was physical and real. I'm not kidding. I wasn't high, right? Like I wasn't high on mushrooms or anything like that. This was an actual experience. And so if any of you guys out there have had this sort of experience, feel free to chime in at the, down below the video. So I think that's all I want to go into. And again, just make sure that when you form something, again, this is just this quick summary. If you're going to form a fantasy, make sure you form it out of nothing, out of the ethers, out of your mind's eye, and then you also collapse it back into the mind's eye. Otherwise, there is a energy that's being sent to this entity if you do not collapse it back into nothing. Okay? So hopefully all that makes sense, and hopefully for those of you who tend to be a little more on the sort of woo-woo esoteric side, hopefully you got something out of this video and some food for thought. With all that said, thank you much.